I like the way you did that. All right. Can I move over? Okay. There we go. All right. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So most of you I've actually had the pleasure of working with through various GPs. As Christopher said, my name is Chris McGuire. I'm an L2 located in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. So I tend to frequent, when I'm in Canada, the Ottawa/Montreal area the most often. When I do have opportunities come down to the U.S., especially in the Northeast, I try my best to do so. But still, it's really impressive to come here and see a lot of people, just about more people sitting in this room for this one presentation than came to the Canadian Judge Conference that we had in Ottawa.
Import us.
Sorry?
Import us.
Well, we came down, there's three of us in our car. We were talking about trying to annex this conference into Canada, but we're running into some resistance right now. All right, so we're going to talk about slow play, as the overall theme of the day is failure. The main reason why this topic came up for me as something I wanted to present is because when I was stepping back and looking at my performance at various GPs, at PPTQs that I run, over the course of a period of months, one trend I noticed for me specifically, and I don't know how many of you have noticed this yourselves, I have a very difficult time calling this correctly. In my opinion, again, just my own opinion, I believe it is the most missed call in the judge program. It is the penalty that we as a judge community, I think, fail to enforce correctly the most often. So what I wanted to do was kind of do some internal reflection, look at what I can do, and that developed into a conference presentation that I wanted to present, first of all in Canada on the Labor Day weekend, and then see if I could take that to other conferences and see if it would be helpful. So just to tie it into the overall theme of what this conference was about in terms of failure. So what we want to talk about is, first of all, what is slow play? We're going to get into why we enforce it, why it's important for us to enforce it, why is this something that's actually a thing in the IPG, and what are the tools that we have available to enforce it, into what scenarios that we have available to us, specifically when it comes to pace of play and also to executing loops, and basically try and develop strategies as a community that we can take to our events and see if we can maybe help push tournament play just a little bit better. So first of all, what exactly is slow play?
Playing too slowly.
Okay. That blows my mind, yes. What do we mean, though, by playing too slowly? What does that mean? At the back. Sorry.
Playing slowly to gain an edge? Like you're playing slowly on purpose?
That's, yeah. So when you're doing playing slowly, specifically to gain an edge, now we're moving away from slow play as a penalty, and we're moving into stalling, which now we're getting into DQ territory. So stalling is definitely an offshoot of slow play, but it is something that I'm kind of leaving aside as its own separate entity. So I'm not going to be talking a whole lot about stalling here, but yes, definitely is something we want to look out for. You had, I believe, your hand up next.
Taking an unreasonable amount of time between game actions.
Taking an unreasonable amount of time between game actions, absolutely. Yeah, Steve?
Playing at a pace that would lead to a match potentially not being able to be completed in the allotted time.
Playing it in such a way so that the match may not have a chance to complete.
Not playing fast enough to finish 3 matches in 50 minutes.
Okay, within a tournament structure, we have a defined time limit, so absolutely our goal is to try and finish 3 games within 50 minutes.
Taking actions that don't advance the board state or game state.
Taking actions that don't advance the board state, okay.
Sometimes taking actions that are not involved in your game of Magic, such as just leaving the table in the middle to go to the bathroom or go somewhere without involving the judge.
I'm just gonna go check out and see where my friend's sitting over there. Yeah, okay. Any other examples? Okay, so if we want to cut down to the bare bones definition, the IPG gives us section 3.3, tournament error, slow play. Player takes longer than is reasonably required to complete game actions. If the judge believes a player is intentionally playing slowly to take advantage of the time limit, then we move into stalling, which is an unsporting conduct, not a tournament error. It is also slow play if a player continues to execute a loop without being able to provide an exact number of iterations and the expected resulting game states. We're going to get into that one a little bit when we start talking about loops. For now, we're going to focus on the first part about reasonably requiring game actions. Now, within the IPG, what is our penalty and what are our additional ways we can fix the problem here? Eli?
The penalty is a warning. It's a tournament error warning, which means that the second one is the operator to a game loss, not the third. When you assess the penalty, the remedy is to add 2 extra turns, so you play 7 extra turns instead of 5 extra turns. I believe that you are not supposed to provide a time extension for the time that the player played slowly. I think the language is a little ambiguous, and I'm not clear, but I assume you are supposed to give a 2 or 3 minute time extension for the time it takes you to issue the ruling. But if they feel like, oh, this guy wasted 5 minutes doing nothing, you don't give a 5 extension, just the 2 extra turns.
Okay. That's basically it. So it's a warning. A very important point that Eli made. This is a warning for a tournament error violation, not a games rule violation, which means that we upgrade to the game loss on the second warning. And to me, this is a very powerful tool that, again, I don't think we as a judge can take advantage of enough to try and emphasize how important this is to the player base. As Eli mentioned, the additional remedy is to give an extra turn for each player to be applied if the match exceeds the time limit. Nowhere in this field does it say that we also give a time extension for a player playing slowly. If we are delivering a ruling that lasts more than a minute, yes, we are giving a time extension for the ruling itself. If a player absolutely needs to go to the bathroom, we do deliver a time extension for that. But just because a player is playing slowly, we do not give them a time extension. We simply give them the extra turns, unless what? Unless we're already in extra turns. Now, let's say you're giving this penalty to both players at the same time. You are issuing simultaneous slow play warnings, both to player A and player B. How many extra turns do we give?
2.
So we do not give 2 for player A playing slowly and 2 for player B playing slowly. We just leave it at 2.
It's the same occurrence.
Is there anyone who would give like a total of 4 turns? Or is that... You would?
Yeah, it doesn't say not to. It says for each slow play warning to give the 2 turns.
Is this simultaneous, or like one's playing slowly and then the other one is? Because I think that the remedy only applies once if it's the same root cause, like they both stop and talk to a friend. But then if one of them is comboing off slowly and the other goes to the bathroom without asking permission.
I'm too long. I'm going to go to the bathroom.
How did this happen?
Thanks.
True, it's not... We shouldn't end up in that spot very often,
I
but...
think the most common way for this to happen is you go to the table to do a deck check. And then now both players are sideboarding into game 2. They're shuffling and shuffling and shuffling, and they're chatting, and that's how it happens. So you're standing there trying to do a deck check, and you notice they're both slow play.
So they're both taking, say, 5-6 minutes to sideboard and shuffle and present.
Right. Then you check their deck, usually it comes back okay, and then you give them both slow play.
Yeah. So yeah, in that situation, each player is getting an individual slow play warning. So yeah, you would give 2 for player A and 2 for player B. Most of the time you should not end up here because it'll be one player playing slowly unless they're completely independent events. Listen?
Does that mean in a game of two-headed giant, then it would be exceed by 4?
No, I'm actually serious. I'm
That's a
actually
fair
curious.
question.
If it counts a team or if it counts actual players.
In Two-Headed Giant, you basically yeah, like I don't think there's any competitive Two-Headed
Yeah.
Giant events anymore.
No,
I think that's been strictly regulated to like a regular aerial format. Yeah. So I don't think that would actually be something we would encounter at all. But it's a cool question to think about.
It was just the way that it was worded. It's the only time I could ever see that there being more than one player in a situation.
Okay, so clearly we care about this. We have a full section in the IPG. We have defined penalties for this. But why? Why is this so big? Why do we care so much that players are maybe playing a little bit slower than we would like them to?
Well, if they go to time consistently every round, it's bad customer service because they're slowing down the tournament for literally everyone else. But also, it is unfair to their opponent. Like, their opponent could very easily be capable of winning, and like, it is not fair to that person to just take away all the time.
Yeah.
It's also not fair to have no slow play enforcement. All the people watching the coverage matches on Twitch and just watch one player tanking and tanking and tanking, and the commentators trying to fill in.
Right. Steve?
This is more of my personal philosophy than like a written in the IPG philosophy, but Magic is a game of making the right decision in a short amount of time, and not a game of finding the perfect solution. So even if you still have 40 minutes left on the clock and it's game 3 already, you still only get so much time to decide what to do, and you have to keep the game moving at a reasonable pace.
Yep, certainly tournament Magic, because of the fact we have that clock in place. You don't have perfect time to make perfect information at all times. You may have to just make a decision and live with the consequences in that. You don't get all the time in the world to make all your plays.
So I actually wanted to follow up on that point because I have had slow play calls in the past where it's like 15 minutes into the round, I go to the match, I see one player really quickly, and I say, at this point I'm issuing a warning for slow play. And the response is, this is game 3, it's Death Shadow Aggro versus Death Shadow Aggro. We will definitely finish the match on time. And so it's an interesting question as to whether that is grounds to not issue slow play or whether slow play is slow play.
I'll open that up. We're 15 minutes in the round. It's game 3 of an aggro versus aggro match. Does that matter when we make a determination whether to call slow play or not?
No, because we are not supposed to take. I've been told on certain occasions that we're not supposed to take board states into account for kind of more bigger picture or like for rulings on this scope. So it's just a matter of this is still slow play. It's being enforced across the board as slow play. It's not subjective slow play. It is slow play.
Okay. Any other?
I would think that we would want to enforce it no matter what because it helps reinforce good habits. He may be playing aggro today, but if tomorrow he's playing control and he's used to being able to take 5 minutes if he hits a point, that might not be as viable an argument for me. It's good to have you know that this is how I need to play whenever I play Magic.
Okay. Definitely there's an argument made for uniformity here and then in front and then one more.
I was going to say, so aside from the subjectivity of the board state itself, we're trying to. There's the subjectivity of the slow play itself, and that one person's slow play might not be another one. So if we're trying not to take that subjectivity into it, we also shouldn't be picking board state. You shouldn't be picking and choosing.
You can't.
Interesting whatsoever things to bring into your decision.
Okay. Down here.
Yeah, it's important to have a standard so that judges can enforce the same slow play everywhere else in any format.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that you can play faster at a later game doesn't give you ground to slow play earlier games.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is that true? We're not supposed to take into account the board state? I'm pretty new at this, so I actually heard that you did take into account the board state. Like if somebody drew a land and you could see it and they're just sitting there with their land in their hand.
Well,
so And I know that somebody explained it to me that they did. Somebody was running an event for me, and they issued a slow play warning because of the board state. Actually, but I didn't question that.
Okay. So, first of all, there are a couple of things that we have to take into consideration there. Bluffing is the big one.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't want to completely remove the ability to bluff from the game, which is why some of the penalties are designed the way they are. So a player draws a land for turn. A player is entitled to take a little bit of time to make it look like he's drawn something relevant and is trying to decide his play. That's okay. He can't sit there and spend 3 minutes just looking at his card and trying to oversell the bluff. There has to be a line drawn there. Also, with slow play, there is definitely some attention paid to the board state because you have to consider any new changes to the board state. Let me say this. In a limited game, let's say I have 7 creatures I'm playing against you, and you have like 8 creatures on the board, and we're in a complete ground stall. So I draw a card, and I take maybe 60 to 90 seconds, think about my play. I decide to pass my turn. You draw your card, you take about 90 seconds, you play a creature, and you decide to pass the turn. I draw my card for the turn. Should I be able to take like a full 90 seconds again to reevaluate the board state? Or can I maybe just go, okay, he's drawn a card, he's played a creature, his hand is the same, he's got one more extra guy in the ground. It might take me, 20 seconds to process that. Do we want to allow a player, though, to take 90 seconds to 2 minutes because the board state changed by one creature? I would say no, personally. I would say that if I'm watching that match, I would probably want to step in after 30 and say, okay, board state really hasn't changed that much. Let's move on. Any thoughts on that?
Basically, I think the confusion is you shouldn't take the board state into consideration. You should take changes into the board state into consideration. Yeah. I'm not going to be flexible about slow play if there's 7 creatures on each side, but I might be flexible on the board state if there's 7 creatures on each side of a living death in the graveyard, because that tells me that the entire board state is probably brand new, as opposed to one that they have been building for 5 turns and they should already know.
Yeah.
And you should also take into account the amount of information that may have changed. It's not just necessarily the board state, but like any time where, I just cast a Sphinx's Rep for 11, I might need a little more time to process all of my options than I would if I just drew a single one.
So at least one person said that their definition of slow play is not being able to complete all of their matches within the allotted 15-minute time period.
Okay.
How do you square that with the saying that people that are on game 3 15 minutes in, they can clearly finish all of their matches within the allotted time? So why?
Yeah, but with that statement, though, I think we still want to be enforcing slow play, even if they've only spent 15 minutes and they're clearly into game 3. We want to make it uniform and consistent for the players across the board, in my opinion. I could see maybe an argument for not caring as much if you really don't think it's going to be a problem, but to me, I think it's more important to present a uniform and consistent experience to the players across the board. We should be calling it the same, I think, in game 1 as we do in game 3. We should be calling it the same in round 1 of a PPTQ as, say, in the top 8 of a Grand Prix. I think uniformity is very important there. Please, absolutely.
Do you see that difference if you are simply observing the match versus when the opponent calls the judge over trying to get the slow play?
Okay, so your question basically is, if a player alerts me to it, am I going to be more receptive to it? Am I going to be watching for it more than if I just came to the table and started watching the match?
Specifically in that game 3, 15 minutes in.
Okay.
If the one player hasn't called me over, it seems to me that both players have agreed that they're playing at a reasonable pace, even if I don't necessarily agree that they're playing at a reasonable pace.
Do you get to make that call?
That's the question. Do the players get to make the call as to whether the pace they're playing at is reasonable?
Doesn't the IPG say something about if the players can come to a decision that's agreeable for both of them and it's a minor infraction, that's okay?
That's with regards to disputes, though, as opposed to what I would consider slow play, which is kind of more an issue with the way that you're playing a game, not the interactions of the cards. different scope on the game.
That I agree with, yes.
I would say with regard to the pace of play, you're looking for a general standard to a pace of play that average matches of Magic finish 3 games within 50 minutes. So some games may be complete blowouts and turn out to be 3-game, 2-minute games, or 3-turn, 2-minute games. Other games, you'd think they would finish within 10 minutes, and they turn out to be this drawn-out 30-minute endeavor that you could not say either player was playing slow at any moment in that game. But overall, players should be playing at a pretty consistent pace, whether they've got 5 minutes left or 40 minutes left. And that's kind of where you can get into these situations where you have slow play, even though there's a ton of time left.
You should be able to dissect what's going on within the game state and make a decision. You're not simply allowed to take more time to dissect the board state because there's more time.
I think therein basically lies a misconception among players that we as judges need to educate players better on. Because you maybe have built up a bank of time because you play quickly in games 1 and 2 does not mean you now get to spend that bank of time in making longer decisions in game 3. And nor just because you've gone to time and now you're in extra turns, now that does not give you the license to take infinite time to make decisions in extra turns. There is still a time limit because you are taking up the time of the other players, of the TO, of the judges on staff. One more question and then we'll move on.
Just like the concise way it's written in the rules, like super good, like just reasonable based on situation.
Yep. Okay. So our main reasons we definitely touched on in the discussion is, one, we want to make sure a player doesn't get to unfairly monopolize the clock, make it so that the other player doesn't get a chance to play their games. Secondly, we want to make sure that the tournament runs in a timely manner. We're all humans. We want to get out, before 2 a.m. The players there's not just their tournament. There's the TO, there's the judge staff, there's the people watching if there's streaming coverage going on. We need to be mindful of those people as well, and we want to make sure that the tournament proceeds on. We don't want to hold a matchup for 2,000 other people because these guys are taking 5 minutes to play their turns each. So what I'm going to be doing right now is just playing a few brief video clips of some matches, and I'm going to be displaying a little clock timer on the screen. And what I want you to do is watch the clip. I'm going to be playing it without sound, so we're not dealing with commentary. This will be more like what you would be seeing on the Magic floor as a judge. And I want you to look and see if you, A, believe slow play is happening, and B, at what point, based on the clock timer, would you step in, or in your mind, mentally prepared to give out the slow play warning to players?
Sorry, I want to clarify. We're only talking about warning here, or are we also discussing the I need you to make a play nudge?
The point, pardon me, you're correct. The point where we're first going to be saying, hey, I need you to make a play. The point where you first would step in. Sorry. So let's start with that.
Oh yeah. Turns out we were not incorrect.
So again,
Is it
let's
the
turn
rest?
the volume off on that. That was the first one. Anyway.
I know that guy.
So I'm going to pause there. All right. Would anyone have given slow play in what they saw in that clip so far? A couple people?
I would have asked the active player to make a decision.
Yes. Either you're going to step in with the warning or you're going to give the caution. You're at least going to bring it up to the player that, hey, we need you to play quicker. Is there anyone who was fine with that pace of play and would not have stepped in at all? Okay. What were your thoughts on that?
I didn't think that was unreasonable.
Okay.
I mean, totally out of context like that, I think it disgraces the ball. If every turn of the game had been like that, I would feel more compelled to say something. But
Well, based on the board state, where do you think we are in the match? Like,
well, we've just started. Well, looks like we're in game 3. We've just started the game.
Right. So.
And, yeah, I mean, I played that deck. It's not like sequencing your lanes and stuff is very complicated. I understand taking a minute to figure out what you're trying to do, but
okay.
So what makes it okay on turn 2 as opposed to turn 15 though?
It's not so much that, it's like, if it's every turn, you sit there and stare at your stuff, it's one thing. If you play quick, take a minute on turn, and then play 30 seconds, play quick, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
but if you took the same amount of time the next turn, I would say something.
Okay.
I think there's a huge distinction between taking time to process a critical play versus doing that every single turn. Like, I mean, that was probably borderline, again, out of context.
Okay.
But like 30 or 40 seconds to sequence his lands correctly, to play a critical removal spell early in the game is reasonable as long as he's not doing that turn after turn after turn.
Okay. Steve, and then.
I probably would have called or intervened a lot earlier than other people seem to have been saying, because when he first, your Fox had 42 seconds, he was fiddling with the fetch land and deciding, like, when he just went back in the tank again, that was ridiculous to me, because the whole sequence of the game was, he played a scry land, he knew what was on top, he left it on top, land, plays the land, passes the turn back. He draws the card he knows he's going to get. Plays the land he knows he's going to play. Passes. At this point, his opponent's either going to play something or not. It's a 2-drop. We're still on turn 2. There's only so much he can play. His opponent plays a single thing. One thing has changed. On his first turn, if the first card doesn't know what it's going to be, it should not take him that long to have a mental model of, like, a decision tree of where he wants to go. He should be thinking about the game as it evolves, and he just takes forever to even make a single play. He doesn't make a land drop. He doesn't practice fetch land. Like, there's nothing.
So here and then up at the back.
I mostly agree, but like, I don't know. Obviously, like say contextual too, because what he's probably deciding is the land thing, and like probably has the counterspell of 2 mana in the deck. He's probably deciding he wants to play attack or the one that he put on top or whatever he did. So like, it's a decision, it's specific, but I don't know. Like, I agree with you mostly, but that's something to think about too.
Okay.
He wants to make his own off the rest of the game.
At the back.
So the thing that would get me on that is, so he goes into the tank a little bit, he adjusts his lands, he goes back into the tank again, and then he adjusts his lands again. Like he's doing like a repetitive, like he's not getting himself out of it. That's probably what said something to him. The second time he went back to just fiddling.
All right. 2 more comments in the red and then down in front.
Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, so I was just commenting. I thought that if we were watching from the start of the match, that from the game, then you were moving at a very fast rate of play. And just after watching that, I think that after the integral game state change with both policeman and line, he had to make a choice, so it was accounted for. I thought it was acceptable.
It wasn't a fast rate of play. That was a normal rate of play.
In the front here, and then we'll move on.
I think one thing that I've struggled with here is that everything can seem reasonable if you think about it enough.
Right.
So one thing I've started doing is actually pull out my phone and time. And what I'm looking for, building off what Steve says, if I see them, after they've counted out their lands or counted out cards in hand and they are ready to make a play, and they undo all of it. That's the visual cue that they're in the tank, and that's usually when I start a timer. And depending on how messy the board state is, I'll like fudge a number on both sides. But like around 30 seconds, once you're getting past that, you're getting closer now to a minute without having made a decision. And generally speaking, you know, if most decisions in the game take about that long on average, that's not going to be reasonable. Therefore, this decision shouldn't take about that long. And it's very imperfect, but it's a guiding line that I can try to use.
Yep, that's fair. I will say that at about the point I paused the video, the judge came over and did ask Paulo to start playing. So, sorry?
Is that why I didn't pass the turn back immediately?
I believe so, yeah.
I was like, I have more problems with him not passing the turn back.
Yeah, just right at that point there, that's where the head judge is starting to have a conversation with Paulo to say, hey, I need you to play faster. So, yeah, right at the end, that is the delay there. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's go here. And we'll bring up the timer again.
Close the ad.
And closing the ad. There we are. Sorry, timer. There we are. Is there anyone who is still okay with the pace of play right now? All right, so at this point, everyone would be like, I need you to do something? All right.
You're still expected to play at a pace of the game.
So now he finally...
The one that's fiddling slower, that's how you know. Yeah.
So he's finally resolving a Genesis Hydra by the looks of it.
No, just.
Now he has
Oh
no! I wish I had a third camera. Come on.
Wait, did you reveal for
He's not done shuffling.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's shuffling right now.
Oh, right. I've got Hydra shuffle. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you were watching this, you saw him play the Genesis Hydra do something, would you allow him to go back in the tank at this point? Or would you be more aggressive as to say, hey, if you're thinking I need you to play?
I give him about 10 seconds.
I would give him a little more than that because, like, it's not like he just got some, like, do-nothing card. Like, the fact that he got Xenagos potentially gives him a little bit of play based on what's in his hand, simply because it can potentially generate mana.
I had a problem with his delay after he looked at past the turn.
Yep.
And he sat there for like 5 seconds.
That I will agree with, definitely.
Yeah, I was like borderline on like calling him on the untap alone because he had no options.
Mm-hmm.
He was also sat down.
What is this?
And like,
Yeah. This is still the same turn, yes. I'm gonna. Yeah, he definitely went back in the tank after Xenagos came into play.
What he does have.
Does he end up winning this match?
No, I don't believe he's. No, it's just playing at this point. All right, Steven, finish your point. We'll come over here and we'll move on.
But basically, where I'm at is again, like as far as amount of information changing, because the course is in play, he knows what he's drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows what his hand's going to be. Flipping the forest, I believe, doesn't really give him that much extra information. It's not an extra option. It's just like, cool, I get to play a forest from the top of my deck instead of my hand, which you're going to do every time anyway. It's the, sees the wooded foothills, no extra information really. His game plan should be in his head. They know each other's deck lists because we know this is the finals of an event. And like it's invitational, they're going to give each other deck lists. So, like, he should have figured out this sort of stuff. It tanks forever. Like, it actually went on for a hilarious long time. but I would have called it way sooner than that. Because
that's fair. One point over here, and then we'll move on to the last video clip.
I think it's a big slow play tell for me is that he's taking these really repetitive actions. Like, I know he looked at his morph at least twice. It might have been 3 times before he played the Hydra. But he checked them. The morph didn't change. He's not checking to see if he has different, like, did it turn to something else. When you start doing stuff like that, it's kind of a sign to me that you're just going in circles.
Right. I think that is a pretty good tell. That is certainly something to keep in mind as you're watching the match.
How many morphs did that deck even play?
It's a manifest.
It was we were in the manifest era there, so that was fair.
Whatever it is, I'll change.
All right, we're gonna go on. We're doing one more video example.
The judge,
it's 4:30.
The judge.
Thank you.
You can just. After the first time he tanked, the judge found to make him play before the second time because it seemed like he rushed to an action and then tanked again.
In that clip, I don't believe a judge had stepped in at this point, so this was just them playing. Okay, so one last clip. And if you're familiar with this clip, it's probably a little infamous, but let's...
Oh, infernal barrel. Yeah, that's basically This is a joke.
I did not edit this video. This is just directly off the Magic Gathering YouTube feed.
Who's the cameraman?
All right, so one thing I did here, whose turn is it?
Yeah.
If we're coming up to this match and watching it...
I saw Owen make a hand motion.
Yeah.
Then it comes to support making a hand motion.
So that's
Certainly, if you're looking for ways to determine if it's a slow play, if you come to the table and you sit down and you look at everything that's going on, and then you have to look up and ask the players whose turn is it, by the way, I think it's a good indication that somebody has taken too long to do something.
The question I have, though, is, I mean, obviously we're fairly attuned to giving a caution and possibly a warning.
Right.
But what you would need to see to actually give that second warning and actually possibly a game loss. Like,
what would you need to see?
Like, would it need the same thought? You know, we're all kind of commenting very nuanced. Like, well, he passed a turn and he didn't take an action. I'm just saying, like, are you going to hold that?
If I'm asking a player to make a play, what is the purpose of that? I mean, we're just giving a call. I'm not actually giving him a warning. I'm just saying, hey, I need you to make a play. What are we doing by saying that?
We're letting them know that they've gone in the tank.
We're letting them know, A, they're taking too long. B, we're here watching them. If I don't see any improvement in their, if they don't pick it up, like if they still continue to dirtle at the same pace, yeah, I'm going to jump in there and say, okay, that I've asked you to pick it up, you haven't. This is your warning.
It's also more likely to get the game moving at a reasonable pace. And if you give the court, they're going to argue it.
Yep.
You're going to ask them to slip. They're probably going to appeal. Ultimately, well, you do give the warning. The warning doesn't actually end the game any quicker.
No, it doesn't. Yes, we finally have action, by the way.
I have a question about what he just said. If a player appeals a slow play warning,
yep.
what do you even do? Because as the head judge, presumably you weren't there watching.
Okay.
So how do you what do you go off of? How do you know if your floor judge?
All right, so let's say you're head judging an event. Your floor judge comes up to you and says, I issued a slow play warning because this is what I observed, and the player has asked for an appeal. What do you? So first of all, as the head judge, what do you want to know first?
I'm probably going to ask, like, how much time elapsed, like, what actions they were taking,
Yep.
how long you watched, but it feels like without being there watching, unless the judge was looking at the clock, it all feels like my floor judge is just going to tell me, I was watching him, he took a long time on his ponder, and it's like, okay, well, what is a long time to you, what is a long time to me?
Okay. A couple quick points on that.
From what I've heard, like from my judging ventures, I guess, is like you always should uphold slow play. Obviously, there's exceptions to it, but like I'm sure, like if the judge was like, oh, I may have been a little bit hastily to that, I apologize. Maybe you could like overturn it and not give the warning in the extra turns. But generally, as a rule of thumb, we should always uphold slow play.
Okay. Point, and then we'll move on.
This is another reason why I started like using the timer, because when the head judge comes over, you can say they have been in their upkeep for 1 minute. And you can kind of just give a concrete thing that there's not much he said, she said to it. It's just like, well, this is the amount of time. And then the head judge can act on that even though they weren't there.
Okay. Steve? And
I think as a head judge, the only time I'd overturn it would be if for some reason my floor judge didn't really gather enough information and I, interviewed players and they say, oh yeah, I cast a warp world and then it, for some reason, the judge didn't notice it, like, oh, okay, like, that was the crazy amount of complexity, but otherwise, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think you have to have some trust in your floor staff, first of all. Like, they're going to be the ones who are obviously watching the clock, watching the pace of play. I think all of this boils back down to, like, what is the most difficult aspect of slow play? Yeah, like, exactly. In terms of issuing to players, in terms of just as a overall philosophy, what's one of the biggest difficulties we encounter with it?
It feels almost confrontational. It feels like we're coming in and making a judgment of the player.
Okay, definitely.
It's also somewhat subjective.
It's subjective.
Yep.
It's subjective as hell.
Like there is
What may be slow play for you may not be slow play for me. Certainly, if I'm the head judge, if I'm going to go over and listen to the match, I'm obviously not going to be in a position to say, well, I think you played fine because I didn't get to watch it. All I have is my floor judge's report and what the two players tell me. And unless there's something egregious that happened, I'm probably going to side with the floor judge like 99.99% of the time on that. Quick point there.
Well, that said, because it's subjective, it's all the more important that if it gets appealed, we at least hear them out, even if it's not going to change our mind.
Yes.
Like express what is frustrating.
I agree, absolutely. We should not blow them off if they want to appeal it. I know some judges are like, no, it's not getting appealed. But really, I'm in favor of at least letting them air their grievance and having that opportunity to appeal so that we present a uniform tournament experience. But yeah, very, very, very seldom am I going to go against the floor judge on that. Christopher, and then Hugh, and then we'll move on.
There's also the fear that like slow play will lead to slow play. Like if I step in and I call a player, it's like, hey, you've been in the tank for however long, you need to make a play, and then they're like, well, I was in the middle of my train of thought, and now you've ruined it.
Yeah.
Now I need to start over.
Yeah.
And now you're potentially forcing having to practice out
At least when I analyze these sorts of things, my favorite one is, oh well, this is a win and it's a very intense situation for these players. My usual dumb guy voice there. I understand that that's going on, but I'm looking at it from a tournament logistics end as opposed to a player interaction end. And at least my interpretation of slow play anyway is that it's something that you have to appreciate from a larger scope. You appreciate it from the perspective of the tournament, and because we're letting one person take 2.5 minutes to just say go, that is not going to create a good and constructive environment for everyone playing.
Right.
I also just want to say that when it comes to her personally, because it's very subjective, I use the Steve Swanger method of determining slow play, which is if you think it's slow play,
it's slow play. Now, that last video clip, if you weren't aware, that was from Game 5 of the 2015 World Championships. Does that, very quickly, does that make a difference to you? 1 point.
So, I don't know if everyone here knows Rob Castlon, but he heard a great story about slow play. You can talk to them, basically, long story short, like the player used that line where they were like, oh, you don't understand what it's like to be in a situation like this.
Wrong judge to pull that one against.
Like 2 weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
Broadcast lines.
Yeah.
He's
All right.
level 3 judge already.
So with the last clip we watched in Worcester,
Yep.
how feasible is it to actually do this both self? Because even though it was Seth's turn, he was actually
Well-
he was in the tank, Owen wasn't doing literally anything.
Yeah, but did Owen have priority there? I mean, it looked like it was Seth's main phase. It looked like Seth was the one who had priority there. Is there anything Owen could have reasonably have done in that situation?
So the one thing is, could we have just asked him to make a play? Because isn't it both the player's responsibility to keep the game moving at a reasonable pace?
I wouldn't say responsibility,
But if you're
but
Owen, why ask him to play faster in this turn without reviewing what kind of thing? That's fair. Because Owen looked like he was equally feeding the tank. I don't think you can expect him to. It's like Owen's probably sitting there like thinking, okay, I can do this. There's no reason for him to push it forward.
All right, so it's been very, very good discussion. I'm just going to quickly try and wrap this up here because I'm starting to run short on time. But we've touched on a number of problems as to why it seems we have problems or calling slow play or why it doesn't get called as often. First of all, as we said, it's subjective. There is nothing in the IPG that says these players must play within 40 seconds or, obviously we're not using chess clocks. We're not using MTGO and their timer system. So all we can do is watch and try and determine among ourselves by watching it if it's slow play. Maybe taking into account some other factors like has the board state radically changed? What new information do the players have? Maybe we are guilty sometimes of, I think someone brought up the point where it makes the player looks like a cheater sometimes. If we say, hey, you're playing slowly, maybe we're not messaging that correctly. Players start getting defensive and going, no, I'm not a cheater. Don't look at me like that. I'm not playing slowly, leave me alone. So perhaps we need to be delivering the message in a better way. Priority placed on catching slow matches towards the end of the round. At a Grand Prix or a large event, when are we usually looking for slow play? More often than not, it's at the end of the round so that we can get the slips in within those last 10 minutes and get the round turned over. I don't think we pay as much attention at the beginning of a round. And it leads into a situation like what we talked about where we're in game 3 of a Zoo versus Zoo match. 15 minutes in and we're already sitting there talking about slow play and the players are like, we're only 15 minutes in. We haven't done maybe a good enough job of emphasizing that we are watching for that throughout the round, not just within the last 10 minutes. And sometimes as judges we're reluctant. I know I'm sometimes reluctant to step in and say, hey, I think you need to pick up your pace of play a little bit. I understand it's a big thought process, but you need to play that a little bit faster. And that's a mental hurdle that sometimes we have to overcome. So a couple points about identifying pace of play issues. Some people have mentioned the stepping in and saying right away, okay, I need you to play faster, or okay, that was too long, here's your warning. I know a couple of people are more proponents of waiting for the player to finish and then saying, by the way, that was too long, here is your warning, so as to avoid issues of disrupting a player's thought process or concentration and perhaps setting them back even further than they were and making things worse. What thoughts does anybody have on that? Do you believe stepping in right away, potentially interrupting the player's train of thought is fine? Do you think it's better to wait towards the end? Just a couple of points on that real quick.
I like the idea of stepping at the end, like you said. I've never seen that, but a pretty good idea. The problem is that the person's like, oh, I wonder at what point, like how much time was too long? So then they start like, if the board set really does change, let's just say 3 turns. And like, oh, I can't, how long was I allowed to wait before I'm going to get that other warning?
Back there.
I agree that it's poor for reinforcement. Like that doesn't help them learn. And also waiting until the end of turn kind of feels like entrapment. Like you're like, now I feel like you're watching and waiting for me to make a mistake, so you can just slam slow play on me at the end of the game.
That's fair. Back there. And
you have kind of two things. One, a lot of times if you jump in right away, sometimes they don't even realize they were in the tank and you can jumpstart them. And the other one is if you let it keep going on, you're wasting. So if they've already been in the tank, and if you let them go for 2 more minutes, they've just wasted 2 more minutes.
I agree that it is possible that letting them go just means that you have let them go on too long, and maybe we should have stepped in sooner. Last point here.
I feel like unless the command to
feel in slow play this way, especially on high. This is just wait until the end instead of trying to avoid it by telling them that. Is ideal angle shooting territory. It seems best to avoid that, especially given that saying something seems to be the current accepted best practice.
Okay. I agree with that. Now, the practitioner that I know who likes to wait is John Good, who, if you don't know him, he is now the regional coordinator for Canada, an L3 out of Nova Scotia. The way he's explained it is that he feels that if we cut in too soon, we do run a strong risk of making a player lose their concentration, lose their spot, and force them start again. I think there's some merit, but at the same time, I think there's definitely more drawbacks because we may end up allowing them to go on too long, and we're not really correcting their behavior at the point that we should be. But again, whatever method works best for you is definitely what I think you should be doing to get comfortable with the idea. Other points that I made up that I had for ways that we can improve when to step in on pace of play issues. We want to make sure that we stress to players it's important, just as important at the beginning, the first 10, 15 minutes of the match as it is in the last 10 minutes. One thing that I've seen over and over again is a judge will come in, watch a match for a few minutes, point out to a player and say, okay, I need you to make a play. That player does. The judge watches for 30 seconds, is satisfied that, okay, the player's picked things up, and then moves on to another table. To me, I think if you're going to call someone on slow play, I think you need to stay there at least for a little while so that that player gets that message that, yes, we're here, yes, we're watching, and we're going to be keeping an eye on this. We're not just going to let them go and just end up doing the same behavior over and over again. There's been a couple times I've seen players accumulate multiple cautions because the judge doesn't stick at the table, but never actually get the warning. 1 point.
Would you say turns? Would you say minutes? How, like?
I mean, obviously depends on your team, depends on what your primary responsibilities are. I certainly would stay and watch the match at least 3 turns myself before I would consider moving on. 1 point, Steve?
With the wait until it's turn,
Yep.
rather than to step in immediately, do you then skip the caution and go straight to the warning because they've demonstrated an exceedingly long amount of time?
With that method, I have seen it done both ways. I don't agree with just jumping in with the warning right away because we haven't given that player an opportunity to correct that behavior. The problem is that if we do run into that method where we decide to wait and then they take 3 minutes to make a turn and then we're saying, okay, by the way, that was too long, I need you to pick it up, we still have cost the opponent 3 minutes and we haven't really corrected anything.
And follow up, for any other infraction, if a player makes a mistake, they get a warning immediately. They don't get a caution, and then if they do it again, they get a warning. So if they're taking too long to play, why do we owe them a caution?
Okay, so our pace of presentation has been a little slow. Everyone else is waiting on us.
Okay.
So, do you have anything else?
So at this point, that basically covered the pace of play. I love the group dynamic. I love the discussion on this. The rest of the presentation was going to go into a sort of a quick overview of the looping mechanics. When a loop is a problem, when a loop isn't a problem, and quickly talk about the 4 horseman deck. But as we're running short on time, I think we're going to end it here. Any questions? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the questions. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me through Judge Apps. You can reach me on Facebook under my name. Judge McGuire is my Twitter if you want to reach out to me that way too.
The answer is that deck's no longer playable in Legacy. When the judge asks you how many times you want to do the group, you say until all 4 cards are on the view, sit the graveyard in this order, and I'm close my last card. It's not a correct answer.
That is not a correct answer.
I played against it.